If you own one property and you've been sitting there wondering whether you can use equity to buy the next one, this video is going to answer that question completely. Because the thing is that most people in your position are sitting on more usable equity than they actually realize. And believe it or not, their bank is not going to call them up and explain how to access it. That is just simply not how banks work. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly how equity works, how to calculate how much you can actually access, and the exact structure I'd use to buy the next property. If you're new here, my name is David and I'm a mortgage broker that specializes in helping ambitious Australians make the right property decisions for them. I genuinely love making these videos, and if you're really enjoying my content, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, it's really helping the channel grow. I've done this walkthrough with dozens of clients sitting exactly in the position you are in right now. One property, some equity, but no clear path forward. By the end of this, I aim to make sure you have that path forward. All right, first things first, let's start with the basics because I want to make sure that we are all working with the same definitions during this video. Equity is simply the gap between what your property is worth and what you owe on it. So as you can see by our example here, we have a $700,000 home and we have $450,000 owing. Right, if we draw a line just here, this here is your equity. But before you get too excited, you can't actually access that $250,000 worth of equity, because what that would be doing is lending to 100% of your property's value. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you would understand that the bank is all about risk mitigation, and that, even in your eyes, would seem too risky. So the standard rule that a lot of lenders are going to apply is going to be 80% of your property's value. So if we do that just here, 80% of your property's value will be a total of $560,000. Now, of course, we need to minus off what we already owe on this property, which is our $450,000 loan. So from there, we have usable equity of $110,000. That is how you calculate the usable equity inside of your property and what you could possibly use to go ahead and buy the next one. But before we get started on exactly how you can use it, I just want to go over two common mistakes I see all the time when it comes to clients who want to access their equity. The first one is that your equity is not automatically accessible. Your ability to access the equity relies on two very important things. It's going to be the valuation of your property and what your chosen bank values your property at. Spoiler alert, a lot of the banks will actually value your property very, very differently to someone else. Then the second one is also going to be your serviceability. So you can't actually go ahead and get this equity release if you have no idea how much you can service or if you can service at all. I've seen many instances where clients have $200,000 worth of usable equity on paper. We've done the calculations and the valuations, but we get tripped up at serviceability right there, and then we can only get a further $80,000 approved for them based on their income and financial profile. So I want you to think of your equity in the property as potential, but not cash in the bank. There is a process to unlock it and you can't just get it because you want it. The second mistake that I see a lot is going to be the cross-collateralisation of your loans, okay? The cross-collateralisation means that your property is then further linked to the investment property you decide to purchase. This is a really common trap I see a lot of investors run into on their first property, and then we have to then turn around and unwind all of the bad lending advice they have gotten previously because they've set themselves up incorrectly from the beginning. Essentially what happens is you have your property here, we have your $700,000 principal place of residence, and then what they might say is, hey, I want to use my usable equity to go ahead and fund the purchase of this property here. This is the exact way we would usually do it, or this is how it would usually look, but there's a longer process that we put in place to structure you correctly. And then when you go down at this road, this is structured completely incorrectly because what happens is you have a tie between these two properties. Essentially, it has been one application for two properties. And what that means is when you want to upsize your principal place of residence or you want to sell off this investment property, you're gonna have to go through a long and painful process of de-linking these properties. If we have valuation issues, this causes a whole nother range of issues that we need to deal with. It's a really common mistake that a lot of first-time investors make that stops them from scaling their portfolios because they've set it up wrong from the first one. Now let's get on to how we would structure this. And there is a clear 4 steps that we need to adhere to be able to get this done right. I'm gonna walk through this step by step, so if you want to pause and take notes along the way, please feel free to do so. And we're gonna draw this out because I want you to be able to see how the money actually flows, not just tell you how the money flows. Step number 1 is going to get your existing property revalued. Now, we don't need, what your neighbor's property sold for. We don't need a price finder estimate. We need an independent bank valuation. So we need a bank val. These bank valuations can be done upfront by your mortgage broker, or if you choose to work with me, it can be done by me. We will do your bank valuations upfront. We've seen many occasions where a bank is going to give a value of $1 million, another bank gave one of 750, and then a third bank gave one of 820. It is all over the place, and really what we can do here is shop around at the banks and see which is going to give us the most amount of equity we'll be able to play with to go ahead and buy the investment property. You'd be surprised at what banks are valuing properties. Sometimes they are overinflated, so you do need to be careful of that. But there's many occasions where we've had someone come in thinking they can get $80,000 worth of usable equity out, but we have valuations come back allowing us to access about $120,000. So it's all going to depend on the bank valuation. Step number 2 is going to be calculating your usable equity. Now, we've already done the example of calculating the usable equity, so I'm not going to go ahead and bore you with those details. It's a very simple equation I want you to adhere to. We get your valuation, we times that by 80%. That is the maximum amount of lending you can have against that property. We're going to call that your max lending. And then your usable equity equals your max lending minus your current loan. And in the example we did before, this came up with an amount of $110,000. And that's the number we're going to use for the rest of the scenarios we're going to map out for you. Step number 3 is to not cross-collateralize these properties together. What we want to do is structure it in a very, very, very specific way. So I'm going to draw this example out for you. We have the $700,000 property, like we went over before. We've got our $450 owing, and that's a loan account. Then what we've realized is that we have $110,000 of usable equity. So from there, we're going to do $110,000 here. That is a second loan account for you. And that there is essentially an account full of cash. This is the $110,000 you're going to use as a deposit on your investment property. So what I want you to understand here is this is very similar to how you place your original deposit on the property you purchased in the first place. This is what I mean when I always say that you should only ever save for one house deposit. The next house deposit and the ones thereafter should all come from the equity you have gained in the property originally if you purchase correctly from the beginning. So from there, we are going to then go ahead and buy our investment property. This investment property is going to be worth $500,000. And what we want to use with this equity here, and I'm going to draw a dotted line like that to show you they're not actually linked. This is just where we're aiming the $110,000. Then from there, we are going to have a further $400,000 loan to be able to attach to the investment property. I'm not going to go into the specifics of costs and everything on buying an investment. This is a basic structure video, not a cost video. So from here, we have 1, 2, 3 loan accounts. This is how it should be set up. And you should be submitting 2 different applications. Application 1 is here, and application 2 is over here. Many bank staff, many mortgage brokers might say, hey, let's do it all in one. Rarely is that the right move. I'm not going to go ahead and say people are doing things wrong, but this is not how I would structure it because it's going to limit what you can do in the future when it comes to these 2 properties here. Step number 4 might actually be the most important one of all because you can get all the structures you want. You can get all the usable equity that you can get in your property there, great bank valuations, everything. But if you don't have any serviceability and you don't do a borrowing power check, that's when it's going to go belly up because you can't actually borrow the money to be able to get the investment property that you want. You need to go through your income, your debts, and your living expenses. This is what's going to determine how much you can borrow. But what you can do, because you're going to go ahead and buy an investment property, is when you go for that second application that we spoke about a little bit earlier, we're going to add not only your job/business income, we're also able to use rental income. And that rental income is from the prospective property we are going to purchase. And you'll be able to use 80, sometimes 90% of that rental income that you are projected to get on that property there. It doesn't need to be leased out. You can actually use this with a rental appraisal. Many banks, or if not every bank, will take a rental appraisal as income to be able to purchase an investment property. Now we can go over the whole principal and interest only. Now we can also go through what sort of loan types to be getting for an investment property, whether it's interest only or principal and interest. I'm actually going to do that in a separate video to this one. I want to do the basic structure here, and then we'll do a 2.0 version of this when we go over the types of loans we should be getting with this structure, or at least my recommendation, of course. So I want to recap the structure here. Let's scroll back up to the top here. I want to get your property revalued. We need to go to a separate bank, get a separate bank valuation. We can go to 3, 4, 5 of these different banks. It doesn't matter how many we go to, we can get all these valuations done. They will be mostly desktop or automated valuations. Then we look at the usable equity that you have in these properties. We add in our very basic equation here, the value times 80%, that's your max lending. Your usable equity is your max lending minus your current loan, and that it comes out to, in our previous example from right at the beginning, $110,000. Number 3 is not to cross-collateralize. Best way to do this is just to make sure you're doing 2 applications when you're buying your investment property and refinancing your principal place of residence. And then number 4 is doing a borrowing power check and just making sure you can actually lend the money, because this is all well and good, but if you don't have any income, then guess what? We won't be able to buy yourself an investment property. I recently had some clients that did just exactly this, and it was I've got many clients that have done this exact structure before, and this is how we set them up. So we had their property, which was awesome, valued at $1 million. They had $500,000 that was owing on their property there. We took out $200,000. If you did your basic equity calculation in your head, you'd say, hey, David, we can actually take out 300 grand. We didn't need 300 grand. We left some equity in the property. Then from there, we used this cash to help us fund our investment property. Our investment property was a $600,000 property, obviously taking into our costs and everything like that. We then make sure we have some of that left over, because this deposit here can also go towards things like your stamp duty, so you can fully fund the purchase. Then we had a loan of $480,000 to be able to service this one here. Now, this is where I had a little bit of nuance for this client, because they wanted to know how to set up their offset accounts when it came to doing an investment property. So we have their principal place of residence loan, and this is my favorite thing to talk about. I love offset account structures and how we can actually use them to save money. So this is our spending offset. This is our savings offset. And then we opened up what I call the investment business account. So this investment business account is what we ran all of our expenses for our investment property through. So what essentially happens here is your rental income is going to go here, but the great thing about this is that your investment business account is linked to your principal place of residence, because we want the cash actively offsetting the principal place of residence mortgage, because that is debt we do not like. That is what we call non-deductible or non-productive debt, or bad debt if you listen to all the Instagram ads. The $200,000 and the $480,000, that is good debt, because that is investment class debt. The other part I really like about this structure is what happens at the end of the financial year when you go to your accountant. You only need to bring 3 statements to them. We only need to bring the statement for the $200,000 investment loan, the $480,000 investment loan attached to the new property, and then the investment business account, because everything we do for our investment property runs through this account here. This is how we set this structure up. So this is something else to think about as well, because again, we want to be paying off our $500,000 worth of debt on our home as fast as possible. Now, believe it or not, I know what some of you are actually thinking, because I've done this many, many times before. So let me run through 3 questions I get asked almost every single time that I do this walkthrough with a client. What if I don't have 20% usable equity? Can I still access it? In some cases, yes, there are lenders who will go above an 80% loan to value ratio. You'll need to pay LMI. That's the only bad part there. Or there are places that will implement a guarantor structure that you can explore as well, but ideally that is not for someone who's going to acquire a second property. But ideally, we want to keep your principal place of residence below 80% to avoid paying LMI on your current home again. If we can only take out little deposits, then we go ahead and pay LMI on the purchase. That's okay. Question number 2 is, what if you are on one income? Is that going to kill my serviceability? Well, not necessarily. It depends on your income. it depends on the loan sizes, and it depends on the debts that you carry and even your financial makeup in general and what your family looks like as well. If you have a wife and 4 kids, guess what? Your $120,000 salary isn't going to go as far as you think it might. But if you are a client who has $120,000 income and you are single and have no dependents, your money is going to go a lot further. Like I said before, we can use the rental income to help prop up the serviceability as well. It's really important to get a borrowing power check. That way you understand exactly what you can do. And question number 3, and I think this is one that you all need to honestly ask yourselves, is this the right move for me right now? And not everyone who has usable equity should actually deploy it immediately. It really depends on your cash buffer, your job stability, your risk appetite, and your overall financial position. There are so many things that you need to consider before you go down the pathway of leveraging against your principal place of residence and then going ahead and purchasing an investment property. Yes, it can supercharge your wealth, but you need to do it safely. The structure I've walked you through today is for the most part the right structure for most people. Obviously, everyone's situation is different and nuanced, so that is a caveat on that one there. But whether the timing is right for you specifically in this moment of time, that's a conversation we need to have, not a formula. And if you want to go further with your specific numbers, you can book a strategy session with me. The link is in the description. We can go over your exact numbers, your structure, and your timeline.